And the river still shines and shimmers in the light as it did in our grandfather's day, when they rode all night to fish in the morning and lived in Willapa Bay.
So, we have made it to the top of the 9 o'clock hour, which is very exciting. Welcome. Moe and I pulled the card, and wouldn't you know it? Because Moe is starting tonight, the 9 o'clock hour. We pulled, my friends, the mermaid. So the image of the mermaid here is joyous and radiant. There is a rolling green sea, a red sky with a golden sun, and a blue mermaid body arcing over the sun. Enjoy, the hair is long and hanging down, and the lines of radiance come not from the sun, but from the mermaid themselves, which sounds a lot like someone else that I know. So allow me to read what the mermaid card says. It says, "The siren song is calling to you. It's time to call your magic back from the depths. You know that you inhabit both the waking world and the watery subconscious. This is a good time to pay attention to your dreams." Let's take that in for a second. So I'm going to read something, and then I'm going to say something. So very formally, Moe Bowstern is the editor since 1996 of Extra Tough, a zine that chronicles the experiences and adventures of commercial fisher folk in Alaska and beyond. Moe has worked on fishing boats since 1986, when, as a miserable 18-year-old boat cook, she once inadvertently threatened the lives of the crew by serving pasta tossed with shards of glass. She has fished salmon, halibut, herring, tanner crab caught in Alaska, shad on the Hudson River, shrimp in Miami, and mackerel, crab, and lobster in the Moray Firth of Scotland. Moe has performed annually at the Astoria, Oregon FisherPoets Gathering since it began in 1998. And most recently, she wrote for the oral history podcast It Did Happen Here, which is about chasing racist skinheads out of the Portland music scene in the late 80s and 90s. The book came out last year, and Moe will be touring in the Southeast U.S. later this spring. And on a more personal note, Moe Bowstern is the reason I am at FisherPoets. She's the first person to encourage me to write about these experiences, and I know I am not alone in that. She's done a tremendous amount welcoming in artists and performers, making this community be what it is, and holding that community together. So, I love her very much. And I know that you do too. Let us please welcome. So you may know my handle is Queen of Pirates, and I think of Moe as the Queen of Fisher Poets. So please, let's give her a big round of applause.
Thanks, Lara. Hi. Thank you so much. We were requested, I don't know what's going on with that. Whoa. We were requested to write a poem. I've been a prose writer at FisherPoets for most of the time, but this is called Mandatory Poem. I helped write a book. Maybe you want to take a look. I wrote down what I knowed. Find it with that QR code. Going on tour in the South, I'll be talking with my mouth about this planet in all weather. All we have is us together. So, Lara and I are going to host a Fisher Poets in Portland, Monday, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. It is all a dream. And you'll get to see a lot of your favorites there if you come, and there's little flyers. There will be little flyers at Turn, which is on 8th and Williams in Northeast Portland, or 8th and Killingsworth and Williams in Northeast Portland. It's really nice to be here. I don't know about you all, but I had a lot of anxiety for the last 4 years. For real, though, like a lot. We're all like, it's just been an intense time. And I feel so lucky that I get to come and be here with you all. And I was so scared before I came, because I knew I wanted to talk about some things, and I didn't want to lose your love and esteem. And I want to just remind everyone that, not that I'm presumed to be speaking the truth, but when someone speaks a truth and you get angry with them, it's good to remember that maybe you're benefiting from the lie. I did read that on an Instagram meme today, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use that. But it's good, right? And I do have a Scorpio moon, which means the Scorpio's job is to address the taboos of the culture. And in this culture, it's frequently sex and death and money. But the job of the Scorpio is to dig down deep into the hidden places in the deep water and bring up that which needs healing and show it to everyone. And that the sting of the Scorpio is often the healing that we need. So I'm just going to tell you those things before I read my thing. But also when we were in the gear shack, setting up all of our merch and stuff, after having like anxiety and concern and wondering how it would all be, and there was a part of my brain that was like, it'll be great, it's always great. We'll all come together and the edges will soften and we'll all be in the big happy blob of Fisher poetry. But we were brittle when I looked at people at the gear shack. Like, people were like, how are you? And so I just hope for you all, like, ease, wellness, health. Remind yourself, like, you're working so hard all the time. If you're fishing, if you're part of the fishing community, you have no idea how to ask for help until you become incapacitated. And then sometimes it seems better to ask before that happens, but not everybody was raised by a Marine, so it's just what happens. It's just like... And so we have an opportunity. We talk a lot about climate collapse, which is happening, and the shifting sands we all stand on. But it's an opportunity to change, to really change. In Kodiak, we deckhands were well acquainted with the dope-smoking, friendly, long-haired Israeli deckhand who worked on the 58-foot limit seiner, the Sumner Strait. When migrants make money, we talk about it back home, where no one can see the grimy sweatpants we wear every day or the long hours. All they see is a person, flush with muscles, cash, and a soul full of diesel and beauty. Our friends back home think, maybe if I do that, I also will be ripped and rich. At 18, Israel's young men enter compulsory service in the Israeli Defense Force for 32 months. Young women serve 24. After 2 or more years of military rigidity, many former soldiers then spend some months traveling through South America. This was a migration pattern in the late 90s. Once they run through all their pay, they move north to make the big bucks in the commercial fisheries of Alaska, then return home to attend university, earn degrees, and enter professions. My last salmon season in Kodiak, 1998. There were over a dozen Israelis walking the docks at the tipping point in the season when the college kids go home and skippers hire walk-on greenhorns for the last month of work. When we asked, "Where are you from?" more often than not, they said, "California." They all looked healthy, spoke English and Spanish in addition to Hebrew, claimed to be accustomed to hard work and discipline, excellent deckhand specimens. They were quickly absorbed into the fleet, which immediately began to boil with stories about obnoxious and violent Israeli deckhands. Nothing like the chill Sumner Strait dude we'd all known for so long. Craig's guys started fights with everyone on the boat. Barry ended up firing his guy for beating up the skiff man. No one could tell them anything. On my boat, once the college guy left, we got Lara. She was probably 22, short, dark eyes, dark auburn hair, strong, beautiful accent. I was the only one who tried to say her name in Hebrew. Everyone else Americanized it, Yara. But no one was ever good enough for her. Yara was argumentative, belligerent, and sullen, a know-it-all. Ask her to do anything, get a speech. I was a lieutenant in the IDF. I was like, yeah, but we're deckhands. We just do everything. She had a boyfriend who worked on another boat. He was the only thing she liked to talk about. Gidon could do that. Gidon taught me that. Gidon does that better. Or my favorite, Gidon has 3 passports. US, France, Israel. I was 30 years old with 9 salmon seasons behind me. It was late August, and I was in the last 3 or 4 weeks of a fishing stint that started in March, prepping for the April cod season. I was not old enough to know how to talk to such an arrogant, furious, self-righteous person. I was not old enough to see her immaturity and her terror. She was a short-timer, so I didn't bother. That time of year, we usually traded our seine in for a shallower fall net, good for catching silvers. On net shuffling day, we were out at the skipper's compound. I was stacking net on the boom truck. Ya'ara was on the ground, tidying the web. The seine block towered over her, far higher than on board the boat. You might want to stand back a little. You don't want to get hit with one of those rings. As the skiff man, I felt an obligation to keep her safe, even though I knew what was coming. "I know what I'm doing," she retorted, keeping her head down, eyes on the pile. It was like a movie. How the minute she snapped at me, a brass ring missed her by inches. Then she yelled at me for not telling her in time. August in Kodiak is hard. Our other crewmates were the skipper and his wife, both longtime fishing people whose summer crew tolerance was long expired. They remained in the top house as much as possible while I hung out with the baby grouch. One slow, sunny day when we were anchored up inside Ijut Bay, I took my violin out to the skiff to work out my frustrations. For about an hour, I played klezmer songs, old-time tunes, and a Romanian piece that was just beyond my ability. I like the way it feels to have a box of wood vibrating against my heart, pulling the music out of my whole body. I've never been much of a public violinist, more like a person with a best friend that I can talk to when things are really bad and there's nowhere else to turn. Personal, like an alternate me that I can bring to potlucks, but I don't have to feed. I came inside and went to stow my fiddle in my bunk. Ya'ara stood in the galley, staring at me. Her anguished expression made me pause. What now, I thought, waiting for the inevitable complaint about how I'd inconvenienced her, or maybe Gidon was a member of the Israel-France-U.S. Philharmonic Orchestra. But instead, she said, with her voice halting, "If I could do what you do, play like that, I would do nothing else. Why are you not playing? Why are you deckhand?" It looked like she had been crying. Completely taken aback, I said something like, "Oh, I'm not good enough. It's just for me." She shook her head, furious again. Even her admiration was dismissive and judgmental. That's when I started to see it. The fear and the self-loathing of the soldier. Who twisted her? The Israeli news media site Haaretz reports a third of women soldiers reporting sexual harassment, and of those who talked about it officially, almost half said their complaints were poorly handled. Lara never got any better as a deckhand, never got any manners. Across the fleet, gossip on the out-of-town ex-IDF greenhorns continued to report fistfights, weekends in jail, endless surliness, quitting, universal disdain. People in Kodiak began to complain about the Jewish people who were having such a negative impact on the fleet. I ran around trying to do damage control, to explain the terms were not interchangeable. These are Israelis who are also Jewish, maybe. People shook their heads. There's little time for global nuance in the salmon fleet at the end of the summer, especially in a town for whom Jewish people meant a former fur trapper with a Bronx accent who ran the monk's habit and the woman many considered to be hands down the best at catching herring island-wide. They were just Mary and Ed. Everyone knew them. I tried to say, well, what if people randomly called you a crabber because you are a fisherman? You know you fish salmon, but a drylander doesn't differentiate. But I fish subsistence crab. I tried another tack. Okay, you belong to the religion of fishing, but you live in the nation of salmon. Do you understand now? People in Kodiak are obtuse. I'm not religious. I eventually gave up and finished out my season. I had my own problems, and trying to untangle international relations between the town and the shifting migrant population was far beyond my skill set. But I think about Ya'ara when things flare up in the occupied nation of Palestine. For the second Intifada, in 2000 to 2005, in 2014, in 2021, this past October, and for the last 141 days. She'd be about 48 now, 8 years beyond reservist status, but I wonder if she got called up for any of those other times. I wonder if she became a doctor, worked in a hospital. I wonder if she went to France with Guidon. I wonder what she thinks when she looks out at the sea, and if she's ever had to fire at Palestinians pulling in their nets, if their skiffs remind her of me playing music, the only time she showed me her heart. Ceasefire now. Thank you.
Hopefully we will get to hear from Moe again with the poetry competition later, but just one more time for Moe. Thank you. Next, I am excited to invite to the stage Peter Quinn, who is born in Astoria from a seafaring family, a local, everybody. So his connection to all things maritime has been nurtured as a serial boat owner, a live-aboard, as well as working for the Northwest Maritime Center in Port Townsend. His lifelong relationship with the Columbia River Maritime Museum, one of my favorite places in the world, which his father helped to found, continues to float his boat. I did not write that line. That is on the piece of paper. It's good. It's good. Graduate of Lewis and Clark College, he received the Academy of American Poets Award as a senior. And Peter published Painting Circles on Straight Highways in 2012 and Small Things in 2023. Let's give it up for Peter Quinn.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate this. I spent a lot of time in this theater when it was not in quite such good shape. I saw Lawrence of Arabia here. I saw a lot of movies here when I was a young lad. And I'm very, very glad to be here today. My father was a Columbia River bar pilot, and that's why I'm here today. I also was able, during the 1970-71, I worked on the summer boat, not the winter boat. I worked on the summer boat, the Columbia, and it took the 4 full day shift for my stomach to stop gurgling. And if I took the helm, which I did as many hours as I could possibly do, it would stop gurgling for about an hour and a half, which was time to get enough sleep. So I'm here to give you a glimpse of the bar pilot's life, as seen through his son's eyes. And with your permission, I'd like to dedicate this reading to my father, Captain Edgar Quinn, who died at sea in 1973. So, I'm going to read 3 poems, and the first one is called Cribbage Lessons. Whoever played cribbage, I'm up for a game anytime, so. And then I need glasses. Cribbage lessons. On top of creosoted pilings, decades-old building, a dock inside and out, pilots awaited their turn, their chance to shove a ship upriver to Portland, nudge it around bends against current 2 feet off bottom. Or they'd feel a ship through eddies around always shifting sandbars, rolling through waves and currents only the Columbia River bar could make. In a big square room, gray-green walls, brown leather chairs, seeped with cigar smoke, mingled with the burnt syrup nose of creosote, men said ease and see. I would drop by after school, find Tom Clark, retired Navy, keeping the pilots organized. He was the source of the cigar smoke. Just a hint of sear in it, a round dollop of smooth tobacco in the air. Usually I found a pilot or 2. They liked to play cribbage. I played too, a quarter a game. 15-2, 15-4, a double run of 3 is 12. 9-year-old got seasoned, risking $1 for the lesson. My father would come in ready for his shift. I could never tell if he was mad or amused. He'd ask if I was up or down. Up meant that I went home immediately. Down meant another game, which somehow I always won. I read here 12 years ago, and I read this poem 12 years ago, but most of you probably haven't heard it. This poem is called Dad's Words, and it's about my father's, he had an accident just before the Columbus Day storm in 1962. He and a pilot boat crewman survived, but one man did not. It wasn't until 11 years later, when I was 19, that the sea finally got him. About 15 years ago, my sister gave me the family Bible, Pacific Graveyard, and when I opened it to look at it, out dropped this baggie and these yellow sheets of paper. I discovered it was, for the first time in my life, I'd never seen them before, was the notes that my father made to testify in front of the Coast Guard inquiry into what my mother called Ed's swim up the coast. His words are interpreted, his words are interspersed with my 8-year-old memories and experience. And whenever, because I can't really mimic his British accent, whenever I use these words exactly as written by him, I'll raise my hand so you know that I'm using those words. Dad's words. At 20-40 hours, I turned in my bed, worried about the darkest places of my room, the bear underneath me. At 20-40 hours, he sat in the bow of a 16-foot dory, 10-horse Evinrude chugging in the well, made the 100 yards between two vessels amid the malevolent swells of the Columbia River Bar. On September 28, 1962, 2040 PDST, while transferring from motor vessel Olympia Maru to pilot vessel Peacock, 16-foot dory capsized. Crewmen Bill Wells, Don Nelson, and Captain Quinn into the rough seas. All three made it back to the dory, righted her, and climbed aboard. Dory completely swamped. Due to poor visibility and rough seas, neither the pilot vessel nor Olympia Maru could find us. The boat settled in, water full to the brim. It would be 8 hours before his nightmare found me. While I slept, he swam back to the boat where he sat in soggy water to the gunwales, freeing oars, finding oarlocks, blades biting frothy waves as they were swept away from freighter and pilot boat. 400 feet of safety, now 500 yards away. It took 30 seconds. His $10 Timex counted the hours. Stayed with Swamp Dory, rowing as able throughout the night. No sign of rescue at dawn. Unable to bail the boat at any time, completely awash. His wool pants, warm but rough, rubbed layers of skin raw as he sat in the scouring salt water up to his chest. 40-degree ice, rowing for warmth, not direction. Bill Wells had faded, gone numb. They sat behind him on the thwart, their hands over his on the oars, forced his body through the rowing motions to keep him there. They talked to him. They slapped him. Bill Wells died at 1,100 hours of exposure. He didn't drown, just ran out of life, sucked dead by the cold. Attempted to make Willapa Harbor, utilizing favorable set and both oars. Passed south of Sea Buoy, but due to northerly set and currents from Willapa, could not make the entrance. After 14 hours, a 30-mile drift north, Safe Harbor threw them back, shoved them to sea with current and wind as weapons. At 14:30, U.S. Coast Guard plane flew overhead, but did not see us. 16 hours ago, I slept and he swam. Now I wept, the news delivered to my 8-year-old self. Dreams began. I imagined finding him, bringing him home. Decided for head for breakers at Westport. Last Wells body to boat, rigged lines to aid us in returning to boat, winning breakers. I sat in different places, awed by the people in our house. Casseroles, cakes, and pies came and came. Every pilot's wife was there, threatened by your loss, which could be my loss. My head was a good luck charm. Patting heads used me for comfort and gave none. Approximately 1,700 hours, entered breakers and capsized several times, but able to stay with boat until grounding on beach. The talk never stopped. Laughter sometimes. Different people arrived, said the same things. I listened, content to be ignored. Comfort his closed eyes, imagine him home. Wells' body carried away in breakers. Mostly, I rolled into a ball, cloaked myself, stayed away from the terrible words no one would stop saying. It was time to give up. They only waited for bad news now. The storm hadn't stopped. No one could have made it. Be there for survivors. Comfort them, feed them. Don't leave them alone. Nelson and I landed at Westport, approximately 1,800 hours after 17 and a half hours adrift in swamp boat. Emotions couldn't exist. Hands were wrung, hands were held, hands were limp with exhaustion. The crescendo of disaster was a certainty. We finally walked to Deputy Ellwanger's at Twin Harbor Park, who took us in, notified families and pilots of our safety, and arranged hospital. Phyllis Eady, stationed to ward off calls from the press or the Coast Guard, spare my mother the news of grief, answered our phone. Who are you? What do you mean he's sitting in your living room? Oh my God, BJ, it's Ed. They've been found. No one found us. We saved ourselves except for Bill. We walked 4 miles to the Ellwangers, for Christ's sake. They almost didn't let us in. I got happy with everyone, but I wasn't happy. Bad things could happen. Dads could die. Not today, but tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. I kept a little knot of ready inside me, just in case. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a poem I can only read to a bunch of boaters and fishermen. It's a love letter to a boat. And the boat is the pilot boat Peacock, which is on the Hard in front of the Maritime Museum right now. She came to us in 1967 and was a very big part of my life. So this boat was a piece of my life, an homage to the pilot boat Peacock. Teacher, tester of metal, threw me against her bulkheads, made me hold tight as waves rolled through both of us. My stomach. The bar is all about the roll, unless it's all about the slam of water walls split by the bow, the deck more dry than it had a right to be. This boat was proud. Her nose stayed up, snorted froth, blew it like a stallion, rose and begged for more. A narrow beam made her skittish, and she tick-tocked with each roll, a pulse doing double time, but always on top of it. This boat was an 87-foot Greyhound with armor, 27 knots with 3 screws, sucking water past her double hull. Drawing 3 feet, she could turn tight. This boat was always ready. KOK 360, KOK 360, this is the motor vessel Eastern Taki calling the Columbia River bar pilots. When ships came out easy, from easy into worrying water, it was this boat they had to know would be there. Give them a pilot to take their hand and tell them it would be okay. It didn't matter how bad, the lightship and the Peacock was always out there, where buoy 10 was the beginning, not the end. This boat was steadfast. There were times she would have gone down. She fell 35 feet off a boomer, nothing but air. 2 feet of water in the cabin meant 3 feet in the engine room, but this boat wouldn't go down. 2 engines still hummed. The rapid metronome of beautiful pumps kept the water at bay. God bless pump makers. When she homed into the dolphins at the foot of 14th Street, grateful relief for 3 soaked, shaking men, shaking so much they vibrated. March of 1973, Peacock was there when a Jacobslander, guitar-strung my father, snapped him down between small boat and ship for good. Then she followed my mother, sister's brother, and me on the pilot boat Columbia out 17 miles. The lightship to port, Peacock to starboard. A Navy DE came to pay their respects. A Coast Guard helicopter hovered, dropped a wreath. I uncovered the gold squared cardboard box, kneeled, leaned over the side, braced against wind and roll, held by hands afraid I'd go in. I gauged the roll, held the box out far, attempted ceremony, tipped the box, let my father sift out. Gray ashes hit the water, dusted my face. I licked my lips and swallowed. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate being here tonight. Thanks.
Peter Quinn, those Columbia River bar pilots. Thank you for bringing us those stories. Did you know about this, you guys? Look at this. There's like even finger grips on it. Okay, I'm getting ready for you, Tele. Next up, we have Tele Aadsen, and this is her new book. It is called What Water Holds. And it's from Empty Bowl Press, which is Holly Hughes and her partner John Hughes. I don't know what his last name is. Tele and her partner Joel run a troller out of Sitka. And they also leave from here and drive it up there every year. And Tele was not raised by a Marine, but by a skipper, a woman, a mother skipper. And Tele started driving the boat when she was 13.
Well, I mean, onto rocks.
Onto rocks. Onto rocks. And she's got a heart as big as Fisher Poets, you know, like she comes in here to do her reading and she's like, do you need some food? I have nuts. Do you need any water? Do you need anything? What do you need? Tele Aadsen, you're what we need. Come and give it to him.
Okay. Let's see. Wait. Shit. Hold on. Sorry. Oh, you said. Oh, the handle. Sure. Thank you. Still learning. Still learning. All right. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Lara. And we're just going to do this differently because it's better for me that way. We are at the last set of Saturday night of our 27th annual Fisher Poets. Yeah. And while I'm feeling really honored to close this evening with you and you with me, endings make me think about beginnings also. And we talk a lot about how Fisher Poets started as the origin story of John Broderick making the first 40 phone calls, bringing the first 40 Fisher Poets together and kicking this off. And I want, if we could just take a moment to step the story back to before he made those phone calls and he heard Oregon poet Clem Stark read his poetry about labor, physical labor and work, and craftsmanship, both of words and work. And that was what sparked it for John about we could write about fishing. And we are all here thanks to Clem and his work, and he is not here with us this year, and we miss him, and I wonder if we could just give him some love for Clem. Yep. So what I'm going to read is going to take my time. It's one piece, and then we will close up and go to the poetry contest. This is an essay from my book, What Water Holds, and it is called Hearing Voices. Back in Sitka from a long coho trip, I feed 17 days' worth of socks, soap, and quarters into the fisherman co-op washing machines. Nearby deckhands slump into a battered couch, stare down at phones or up at the TV. Salmon trollers, zoned out on reality show crabbers. It's not my scene. Leaving the laundry room, I step into the hallway and time travel back to childhood. Long wooden frames line the halls, picturing hundreds of trollers that collectively pulled hundreds of tons of salmon from Southeast Alaska. A few 8x10s date back to the 1940s, black and white time capsules of phone booth cabins, Tongass poles logged and lugged down the dock. But most are from the 80s and 90s. Boats surging into waves, boats with captains beaming from full fish holds, boats long since lost to fire, rocks, divorce. Boats I grew up with. Over time, I would grow to love the boats and their people by association. Simon on the Laverne too, Valley Lee Ron, Steve Meyer on the Aquila. But as a child new to the fleet, I didn't yet know either. I first fell in love with fishermen by their voices. The VHF was lively then. 9 years old and perched on the pilot's seat, my hand was always poised to switch over, channel 16 to 68, 69. Trolling was a self-professed gentleman's fishery, and the radio was my finishing school for the tennis volley of conversation. To acknowledge your partner's comment, then lob a return query back. The value of being self-deprecating, quick to deflect compliments while building others up. Nothing too over the top, don't make anyone uncomfortable, but encouraging. Nothing going on over here. I can't catch my ass with both hands today. You'll make a day of it. You always do. I absorbed fleet norms and etiquette among the dropped consonants and cadence, identifying partner boats and striving to crack their secret codes. We've got a purple apple over here. You're smoking us. We've only had a blue banana all morning. I tuned my ears to hear what they said in everything they didn't, the balance of being able to whine for days, with an underlying optimism that kept their hooks in the water, the artistry of casual, unself-conscious profanity. I aspired to mimic the exact weary intonation of a perfectly groaned Christ on toast. Fishing stories entertained, but something bigger bewitched me. Those faceless fishermen filled my dad's silences, and I loved them for that. I will always love fishermen for that. Midway down the hall, I stop at a portrait of a steel troller, a man in a painter's cap with his arms slung around a curly-haired woman. Decades before I learned of the gathering, he was my first fisher poet, a born storyteller content to spend hours keying the mic while his crew handled the deck. Kneeling close to the speaker, I hung on every word. Fishermen don't get much fan mail, but this fellow came back from a trip to a piece of paper tacked to the co-op bulletin board like a note passed in class, his name in a child's scrawl. Who knows the cringeworthy gems 11-year-old me wrote? I like your stories. What I do remember was the breathless admission that I hoped to crew for him someday. Weeks later, a responding note met me in the office. The fisherman thanked me and said he'd be glad to help me find a good boat when I was a little older. It didn't feel like a slight. Rather, the opposite, a gift of conversational reciprocity, so rare in my family. I kept that scrap of paper for years. Long after I'd learned to read the broken blood vessels of his nose, after I'd heard dock whispers of the deckhand he'd abused, after he and the curly-haired woman had divorced and the steel troller sank, and even after he'd died, I hung on to his gift of acknowledgement, proof of a child seen and heard. Over the years, there was less to hear. The VHF quieted with the new millennium. More folks got secret radios, tossing code sheets to talk wide open via scramblers, alien squawks distorting those beloved voices. Then, in the 2010s, we got the inReach. As smartphones altered land life, the inReach forever changed the fleet. Satellite texting, no need for secret radios, just text your buddy the hot report, 160 characters at a time. Which buddy? Anybody. A fleet elder once schooled me on the distinction between friends on the dock and friends you share information with. Now guys we barely know come up to Joel and me. Hey, let me get your inReach. Any perceived boundaries are gone. One boat sees you make a back tack in the morning, the whole fleet will be there by dusk. Talking with one skipper, last summer. He flapped his arms in disgust. I hate the damn things. Worst thing that's happened to this fishery. But he had one. So do we. So does everybody else. What with everyone texting, the radio is mostly silent now. The general consensus is serious fishermen don't talk on 16. The exceptions are crude, cussing someone out for gouging on the tack, and don't much sound like the gentlemen trollers once believed themselves to be. I don't know many of my fleetmates' voices anymore, don't recognize them on the dock, and it pains me to admit I don't recognize some of the boats either. Shrugging aside tradition and superstition, more newcomers christen their vessel with a new name. It's understandable, the yearning to make a boat your own, but boats are bigger than their current handlers. They are their own beings with stories that predate us, identities and secrets and souls independent of us. That's why I study these old pictures like I'm trying to memorize each vessel's genealogy. The Alhambra became the Carla R, became the Constance, because with each new incarnation, it's harder to remember who we used to be. The radio is hushed now, boats repainted and renamed. I know many of my fleetmates not by voice or vessel, but by profile pictures on Facebook. Often I know more of them than I would like. That guy thinks Sandy Hook was a hoax. This one bangs out long screeds at friends of differing views, signing off with a smiley face. Comment threads are not helpful. Instead of feeling closer, much of what I hear through the screen makes me pull away. Plenty of them feel that way about me, too, dismayed to learn just how far to the port I list. We've never had so many ways to be connected, yet our community feels ever more fractured and fragile. The fleet ain't what it used to be. Hearing these words in my head, I am mortified. I know better. The fractures are not new. Some of the ugliest things I have heard have been from white fishermen talking about native people. And one of my earliest memories is of a fellow troller sneering that my veterinarian parents weren't real fishermen. As a species, we've always rushed to paint someone else as the other to certify our own belonging. There is no great golden age to go back to. I pause again at the photo of the steel troller, the man who showed me such kindness that even after learning of his other less kind acts, I still recalled him with love. The complexities that were part of his nature, they're all part of mine too. I don't know why it's gotten so hard for me to hold people as they are, but the boats still do. So many of the boats pictured here were sanctuaries for their humans. Folks who didn't function quite right on land, these boats carried them just as they were, allowed them to find their footing with boots on deck, feeling most secure while tossed in the trough. The world reduced to themselves, a deckhand or two, and those friends who always answered, "Yeah, I gotcha, go up one," and always signed off, "I'll be standing by." And they meant it. Whatever you needed, they were standing by. Because at heart, even antisocial fishermen are social creatures. We crave connection. And while the connections now may sound and look different than the ones of my childhood, they're still here, monopolizing the coffee shop, lingering in the harbor parking lot, speed bumps on the loading dock. This is why Fisher Poets is sacred to me, a conduit to the past, a promise of a future. when Broderick beams at Jay ripping on the harmonica, when Clem's syllables land with the precision of a framing hammer and Moe weaves stories like ocean currents, I'm that kid kneeling on the pilot's seat, hanging on every word. Like, as long as Fisher poets hold a mic, we'll hold on to our history. One elder cocks an amused eyebrow at my concern, far wiser than me. He reminds me the nature of all things is to change. And he's right. I know he's right. To change is to evolve, to adapt new traditions, new rituals. And who wants to be the ghost pacing the halls, rattling rusty chains of the way it used to be? I miss hearing the voices. I do. But there's a weekend in every February where as long as they keep talking, I'll keep listening. And in the long months till we gather again, there's the sweetheart at my side. No coincidence that I fell hard for that boy all those years ago, a fisherman and a talker. Joel speaks all my love languages. I have always been a sucker for fishermen's voices. Thank you for being here.
We did it.
Yeah, we made it.
It's a full moon, you guys. You remember this, right?
Oh. It's also Pisces, so galactic feelings. Galactic.
Just a quick thank you for everyone that has put in their time and labor and love for making this happen, to our volunteers and Doreen, to Nevada and Liv, to John, to all the organizers, and to all of you. Thank you so much for making this happen.
Big thanks to the city of Astoria. We have such a beautiful home with you. You make us feel famous out in the world. Oh, you're one of the Astoria Fisher poets? So cool. Also, how cool that there's 2 queer-owned venues at Fisher Poets, Xanadu and Kala. Kind of awesome. So cool that there are so many young people who read and also attend. I always think about when the cowboy poets came to see how we were doing it right. So we lapped them, you guys. They were like, how do you get the young people involved? And they were just like, we just always need crew. I made that part up. So if you want to be in the contest and you've never done this before, I'm going to give you a quick instruction. All you do is take your poem and come over here and line up. That's it.
All right.
You don't have to submit anything except your ego. Elma Burnham's listening. We miss you, Elma. Amanda Gladdix, homesick. We love you, Amanda. Thanks, everybody.
We got about 7 minutes before we get started. Here we go.
The fire burns bright in the farmhouse fireplace. Closing the logbook, you start to sing. Fishing boats are iced in, snow outside calls me. It's a red late afternoon, I hear a church bell ring.
Uploaded to,
No, I love it. I love
YouTube.
Fisher Poets.
Okay. Wait, don't talk anymore.
Okay.
Let's make sure I got a microphone in front of you before you say anything.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so thrilled to have you right next to me. Please tell us your name, and I want to say what would you say about your performances?
So I'm Ron McDaniel from Sulphur Springs, Arkansas, and if anybody's seen any more of these videos, they're going to be like, what doesn't belong? And that would be, I didn't come here as a Fisher poet. I came here 17 years ago, invited for just kind of a cross-cultural, and I thought I'd come here figuring out what are the differences between cowboys and fishermen. And I found out there aren't that many differences. There's a lot of similarities. So they've allowed me to come back every year. I'm somebody nobody's ever heard of. Fisher Poets is my weekend of fame, and I love to come recite poetry here with them. I have gone up to Setnet with John Broderick's crew in Bristol Bay to see what commercial fishing was like. And like one of his boys said, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into every bite of salmon we eat, and I'll never forget that.
That's very profound. So how many performances you performed last night, right? And you're performing tonight. Where will you be tonight?
I'll be at the Columbian Theater tonight in the 9 o'clock hour, somewhere in there.
Okay, so that's right over
That's
there.
just right down the block here.
What would you like to tell folks to entice them to come and experience this festival?
So I've been here 17 years. I travel the whole country, and I'm stunned that people right here, even in this state of Oregon, don't know the most unique event they could possibly come to. And you get a button like this for $20 that lets you go to every venue all weekend long. And trust me, not that I know things about large cities, you can't even park to go to entertainment for $20, let alone go the whole weekend. So if you don't get to Astoria while you still can, you're missing one of the most unique events in America. I would highly recommend that you make a trip to Astoria the last weekend of February every year.
Thank you so much for your insight on that. And I know I'm going to kick myself later because I'm sure there are other questions I should be asking you. I just can't think of it while you're right in front of me. Maybe I'll catch you again later. And we'll catch your performance tonight.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure.
Appreciate it.